Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate and a special interview with the former American Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. Dr. Rice, let's start with Indo-American relations before we talk about other countries and other issues and subjects. In your book, A Memoir of My Years in Washington, you wrote, "The nuclear deal was the centerpiece of our effort to build a fundamentally different relationship with India." Many today say that fundamentally different relationship hasn't happened and the potential of that relationship hasn't been realized. Would you agree with that?
Well, we've laid a foundation for an exceptional relationship with India. I think there are many ways and many reasons that the U.S.-India relationship is going to be one of the fundamental ones in international politics. Our shared values, our increasingly shared interest, but it takes time. We have a lot to overcome. Sometimes we have within both countries people who are holding on to old verities about what the relationship was once like. And so I'm prepared to be patient. Building strategic relationships takes time, and I think we're well on our way.
It's interesting you say you're prepared to be patient, but you also say it takes time. 6 years after the nuclear deal was signed, are you disappointed that the relationship hasn't moved faster and further?
Well, I look at some of the things that have happened in the relationship in that period of time. The increasing defense cooperation, India now moving to the 4th place among U.S. users of U.S. defense equipment. I look at the 4-fold increase in trade that we've had over the last decade. I look at the increasing technology and cooperation around space, something that would not have been possible, by the way, without the civil nuclear deal. People tend to focus on the nuclear part. The reason that I said that the civil nuclear deal was the essential element was that it opened up so many other windows in terms of technological cooperation. And there I think we are making better use. But I would be not truthful if I didn't say that I had hoped that this would be much further along than it is now. But it's all right. We are moving, and I think we will continue to move in the right direction.
The increase in trade in terms of high-grade technology, which one thought would happen, hasn't really happened. To what extent is India's nuclear liability law, which has been a deterrent for American nuclear investment, responsible for the fact that so many windows that should have opened, particularly high-grade technology, still remain almost firmly shut?
Well, we need to get this settled. The liability issue is a real one for the United States, for American companies, and we need to get it settled. I am obviously now no longer intimate with the details of why we haven't gotten it settled. I remember thinking that it was something that we could settle in a matter of months when we left office. That hasn't been the case. But a renewed effort to do so is extremely important, because it is going to open up even other options and other other pathways that we currently cannot pursue.
Now, when Indians talk to American analysts, they lay the blame on the nuclear liability law and the fact that it hasn't opened up windows. But when Indians are asked the same question, why has the relationship not got further, they tend to say part of the reason is to do with the fact that President Obama is not as enthusiastic about the relationship as President Bush was. President Obama has been not overtaken, but overly concerned with domestic issues, with the economy, with healthcare, but also international issues like Iran and Syria, and India has slipped. Is there some truth to that as well?
Well, I know that the President and his team value the U.S.-India relationship and think of it as a very important one. We haven't had the kind of burst of energy around U.S.-Indian relations that we had in the Bush administration, but I don't think you can expect continuous bursts of energy in a relationship. At some point, you have to take the position in which you find yourself, the movement forward that we had during the Bush administration, and then you have to do the work at every level, from the levels of cabinet secretaries down through assistant level cabinet secretaries, to actually then take care of the underbrush, if you will, so you can get the full relationship.
And has that plodding work failed to happen, or at least not happened as effectively and systematically as it should have?
Well, it is, I think, continuing. I would like to see another burst forward. But again, we have achieved a lot and we have to remember where we came from in the U.S.-India relationship. This is a relationship that was a non-relationship really before President Clinton, who really started us along this road. And so American policy is best when we have continuity across administrations. And we've had continuity. We've not had any lurching back in the relationship. It's just a matter now of working through some of the important details.
It's very interesting that you prefaced your answer by saying, remember where this relationship came from, because in your book, you describe in fairly graphic detail how in 2005, when the India nuclear deal was first being talked about, you had to persuade a reluctant Dr. Manmohan Singh, who felt that perhaps he couldn't sell this deal in India. And you dropped in to meet him at his hotel in Washington at 8 in the morning, and at the end of it, you did persuade him. But do you think that perhaps because of domestic political reasons, perhaps because his hesitation came back to hobble him, after the deal was signed, the Indian government hasn't pursued the matter quite as enthusiastically as perhaps Americans were hoping Dr. Manmohan Singh would do so?
Well, the deal was only signed toward the end of our time there. And so, again, I'm not, I don't know in great detail the back and forth of what has happened here. I saw Prime Minister Singh on my trip here to India, and he remains committed to the strong U.S.-Indian relationship and indeed to the civil nuclear deal. I know how hard it is to get the bureaucracies to really move forward, whether they are in India or in the United States. It's just hard. When you are doing something big and changing something big, it's not an easy thing to do. But again, we have used that foundation to do some other things, not on the nuclear side as much as I would like, but some other things in high technology cooperation that I think are quite remarkable. And in defense cooperation, we've had a real set of breakthroughs.
Now, the problem is that President Obama has 3 clear years ahead of him, but Dr. Manmohan Singh may not have much more than 5 months. How would America, and let me be more pointed, how would Condoleezza Rice herself view the prospect of Narendra Modi as the next Prime Minister of India?
India is a great democracy, and whoever India chooses as its Prime Minister is going to be the partner for the United States. And I believe that since our fundamental interest and values are so increasingly aligned, our values have always been aligned, our interests are increasingly aligned, that the Prime Minister of India and the President of the United States, whoever that is in India, and certainly will be President Obama for a number of years further, that they will find a way to push this relationship forward.
But are you saying to me that 2002 no longer rankles, or you have no qualms or concerns about it? It was something that happened on your watch as NSA. Is that now part of the past and forgotten? Or is it something that needs still to be addressed in establishing, or as you said, finding a way to keep the relationship going?
No, I think we have put behind us the past, and we've established a foundation for the future. And now it's a matter of really pursuing on a consistent basis at all levels, in both countries, the fruits and benefits of that foundation that we put in place.
But I'm going to repeat the most important thing you said. The past is behind us.
The past is behind us.
2002 is not an issue today.
My view is that the past is behind us. We've built an amazing relationship. And by the way, not just the past of 2002, the past of decades before that is behind us.
Another country that's gone through dramatic political change, this year in particular, is our neighbor Pakistan, a country that you know extremely well. Nawaz Sharif won a sweeping election in May. He's been Prime Minister for 6 months. How do you view Nawaz Sharif's 3rd term in office?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's a civilian government, and that's a good thing in Pakistan, not always something that one can take for granted. Secondly, it is my hope that it is a government that is going to do something about the Pakistani economy. You know, there is work to do with the IMF, there's work to do with the Asian Development Bank. Ultimately, Pakistan has to have a brighter future for its people, and particularly for all of those unemployed young people who form the core of extremism, because they are easy pickings, if you will. They're easy prey for those who would radicalize them. I also am hopeful that Pakistan will turn again to the problem of extremism within Pakistan. Every American Secretary of State, really, from Colin Powell through to myself, and then Hillary Clinton, and now John Kerry, has had the job of saying to the Pakistanis, look, extremism is more of a threat to Pakistan than to anybody else. Benazir Bhutto was killed by extremists in Pakistan, and so dealing with the extremism has got to be on Mr. Sharif's
Except
plate.
that's one particular issue where people wonder just how serious Nawaz Sharif is, because he's committed himself repeatedly to holding talks and negotiating with the Taliban rather than fighting and resisting them. And it's even believed his army may not be in complete consonance with them. Does it worry you that he wants to continue to find ways of negotiating, something that's been tried repeatedly and failed, but he doesn't seem to see that lesson?
Well, it wouldn't be my choice, but I'm not the president of Pakistan. And I recognize that in Pakistan there are sensitivities that are personal, tribal, familial. And perhaps that's what's being taken into consideration. It would not be my choice to negotiate with the Taliban.
But you're saying be understanding of local politics.
But I'm saying be understanding of other people's circumstances sometimes. And as long as there is a commitment to also root out the extremists, not to allow them to do the things that they have done in Pakistan, in the Northwest frontier, in Afghanistan, then the policy can work.
Now, during your time, your great ally was General Musharraf. Today, he is a beleaguered man in Pakistan. He's not only under house arrest, but he's been charged with treason, he's been charged with murder. Most Pakistanis say he's getting his just desserts. Would you, as someone who's dealt with him personally and got to know him, be more sympathetic?
Well, again, you know, I don't interfere in other people's internal affairs, but I will say this about President Musharraf as a personal matter. When 9/11 happened in the United States, and Rich Armitage, our then Deputy Secretary of State, went to see him, I think he made some fundamental decisions in the right direction. I think that he began to see the importance of fighting extremism. He began to make some changes, or try to make some changes in the educational system. He certainly, to my mind, was someone who worked with us, not always perfectly, but worked with us on matters of terrorism and extremism. And the reason that there's as free a press today as there is in Pakistan is in part because of changes that President Musharraf made.
So if I read you correctly...
And so I would hope that that would be remembered.
It will be remembered.
I would hope it would be remembered.
So what you're saying is there's a lot that we have to be grateful to Musharraf for,
Absolutely.
even if his faults may be as serious.
I was one who talked to President Musharraf and said to him, don't issue a state of emergency. Don't do it. I remember that conversation like it was yesterday, because I thought it was a mistake. But I also recognize that this is someone who did a lot for Pakistan. And again, I hope that would be remembered by the Pakistani people.
Is it hubris that brought him down?
Oh, I can't make a judgment like that. I can only say that as an American National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, even though I think he made many, many mistakes, and I talk about those mistakes in my memoir, I also think he did some very important things for Pakistan that were good.
Now, December 2013 is also the 12th anniversary of the American intervention in Afghanistan and the toppling of the Taliban government. As you look back on those 12 years, do you think Afghanistan and its handling has been a success? Or would you accept that it's failed because of overreach?
Oh, I don't think that the situation in Afghanistan would be one that we could judge as failure by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we have short memories sometimes. We forget what that place looked like in 2001. Completely, effectively, the Taliban was in control, except for maybe 10% of the country controlled by the Northern Alliance.
Today they bomb wherever they want to.
Well, Al-Qaeda and its kin were deep, but in those days they simply controlled the territory. They didn't simply bomb. They owned the territory. They allowed Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda to burrow in there. Women could not go to school. Men could not, had to have a beard. People couldn't play music. We forget that Afghanistan, today, Afghanistan is by no means a perfect place. It's still probably the 5th or 6th poorest country in the world. It has a lot to overcome. But it does have a democratically elected president who himself is not perfect but is democratically elected. They're going to have elections again. And they are fighting the Taliban. That's a big change.
Let me rephrase my question.
That's a big change.
Let me rephrase my question. You're resisting the characterization that Afghanistan is a failure. Let me put it like this. Would you have expected in 2011 that 12 years later in 2013, Afghanistan would be still where it is? Or would you have expected and hoped for something more and better?
I will tell you, the first time that I flew over the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan, I thought, oh my goodness, they've been given nothing but high mountains and dirt. How are we ever going to help this place emerge? And so I don't know what I expected in Afghanistan, but I'm awfully glad that we can say that there are some foundations now on which a new Afghanistan can be built. Would I like to have been perfect? Yes, absolutely. But I know, as an historian as well, that these processes take a long time. Let's not give up on the people of Afghanistan.
You say the foundations for a new Afghanistan have been laid, but skeptics ask, what will this new Afghanistan of the future be? Will it be a country that survives within its present borders, or do you think once the Americans have left, you might see it split between a Pashtun and Taliban South and a Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek North?
I don't think that you will see an end to the territorial integrity of Afghanistan. There's no doubt that some regionalization may indeed take place. In fact, I think one of the possible solutions to some of Afghanistan's problems is to have more development on a provincial basis. I don't see that as a problem. A weaker center is not necessarily a problem for Afghanistan. But where I do see Afghanistan going is continuing to be an ally of the United States, continuing to try to provide for its people. I saw a poll this morning that some 50+% of the Afghan people still expect their lives to get better after the elections. That's a pretty good number for,
you know, you expect
given how they are.
Afghanistan to continue as an ally of the United States, and yet at the moment, the bilateral security agreement that you've negotiated with the Afghan government is unsigned, and President Karzai refuses to sign it until after the elections. What would happen if in 2014 America were to completely withdraw its troops and not maintain a military presence in that country?
Well, I think that's a hypothetical that we should not entertain.
But it's very likely or possible.
I believe we're going to get an agreement. I think in the final analysis, Afghans and Americans will come to a way to keep some presence there so that we can continue to train the Afghan forces, continue to help them fight terrorism. I think we will get this done.
Many in India are concerned that when America withdraws, or at least reduces its manpower to levels of 10 or 15,000, what you will see in this part of the world is a resurgence of terrorism, probably something like what was witnessed before 2001, and that the part of the world most vulnerable will be the Indian state of Kashmir.
Well, if we were to withdraw and lose interest in the way that we did after the Soviet Union left in 1989, that is indeed a possibility. But I don't think you're going to see the United States withdraw in any way as we did in 1989. I think you're going to continue to see a presence, you're going to continue to see attention, and as it comes to Kashmir, I hope that when things settle down politically in both countries, there can be discussions of how to improve that situation.
The assumption you're making is that American presidents after Obama will maintain an interest in Afghanistan. Are you confident of that?
We maintained an interest in Asia and Europe until the Soviet Union could be defeated for almost 50 years.
And then lost it.
But actually we won that one. That's when we were able to leave. The Soviet Union actually collapsed. We have
this time because you're not winning, the interest will continue.
No, the United States, we didn't think we were winning in 1962 either. We certainly didn't think we were winning when the Soviet Union looked on the march in 1973. But we had the patience to stay there. Sometimes people forget that the United States has had strategic patience, and I think we'll have strategic patience with South Central Asia.
Dr. Rice, let's take a break at that moment. In the limited time available to me, I want to come back and talk to you about President Obama and the problems he faces in Washington. That's in a moment's time. Don't go away. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate with the former American Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. Dr. Rice, in the brief time left to us, let's come to President Obama. His ratings at the moment are almost at rock bottom. Yet when he became president in 2009, an enormous amount was expected of him. People thought that this was almost a new era and a new opportunity. Within months, he got the Nobel Prize as well. Today, when you look back on the 5 years of the Obama presidency, are you disappointed with how little he's achieved?
First of all, Americans are this way with our presidents. On the day that we inaugurate them, they are the most brilliant human being we've ever met, and then several years later, we can't figure out why we elected them. That's just how our Americans are often put so much hope in a newly inaugurated president and then tend to be disappointed. But the fact is that he is our president, and he's our president for a number of years further. I hope that he is going to achieve what he hopes to achieve in the Middle East, particularly a Palestinian-Israeli state. A Palestinian state with the Israelis. I hope that he is going to achieve immigration reform in our country, which is extremely important. And like all Americans, I recognize that we have only one president at a time, and I'll support him in those things with which I agree.
But you know, if you look at the situation that he suddenly finds himself in today, so much of it is made because of his own, how shall I describe it, euphemistically bungling. People say that he almost boxed himself into a corner over Syria until President Putin almost gratuitously bailed him out. The healthcare reform, when it was rolled out, collapsed because the website couldn't function, and people say that was astonishing bad management. Is he badly advised? Or at the end of the day, because he's president, does he carry the can himself?
Do you know how hard it is to be president of the United States? I mean,
But it always has been hard.
It's always hard, and Americans always have their criticisms of their presidents. You know, I will tell you this. When you're in there, it's much harder than when you're out here. And so you should have some respect, I should have some respect, for those who are trying to do the jobs that we did. I don't agree with everything President Obama has done. I think some things have been badly handled. But he's still President of the United States, and he's got 3 years left, and I believe he has a lot left to achieve, and we should try and support him in what he's trying to achieve.
Well, that's my last question. He's got 3 years left. Will he simply limp to the finishing line because for many he looks like a damaged political entity, or do you believe things like a successful Geneva conference over Syria, the successful conclusion of the Iran deal, and perhaps fixing the website can actually restore his fortunes?
Well, there are many opportunities for the United States still to succeed, and I will depersonalize this. This is not about President Obama succeeding. It's about the United States of America succeeding. Now, when it comes, for instance, to the Iranian deal, in my mind, that's only a good deal if it ends up in the dismantlement of the Iranian nuclear program, and that's going to be hard to achieve. But the Iranians are suffering under sanctions that began with the Bush administration in 2006. And so there we have had a policy that has carried out over time. If we succeed there, President Obama will have succeeded, but the United States will have succeeded, and the world will be safer. That's how we have to think over the next several years.
I know you're a very loyal American. And I know perhaps even emotionally, as an African-American, it's hard to be critical of the first African-American president. But my last question, are you an optimist when you say that President Obama will succeed, or are you putting up a brave front?
Oh, I'm an optimist because I've seen so many times that people have written America off or written American presidents off, and they've managed to come back. It seems to be in our DNA.
Condoleezza Rice, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.